They said the battle was already lost. The Benin generals stood in silence as dust rose from the forest paths, carrying the sound of approaching enemies. The king was young. The throne was fragile. The kingdom trembled. Then a woman stepped forward, not with a sword in her hand, but with something far more dangerous: foresight, courage, and spiritual authority. Her name was Idia. By the time history finished writing her story, she would no longer be called merely a queen, but Iyoba, Queen Mother, a title that would reshape African monarchy forever. This is the true historic legacy of Queen Idia of the Benin Empire, a woman whose intelligence altered the course of power, warfare, and kingship in West Africa. Before we dive into the main story, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell notification button for more interesting video like this. Queen Idia lived during the late 15th and early 16th centuries, at the height of the Benin Empire, in present-day Edo State, Nigeria. Benin was one of Africa's most sophisticated civilizations, known for its advanced city planning, powerful guild systems, formidable military, spiritual institutions, and exquisite bronze artistry that still astonishes the world today. But power in Benin was not static. Royal succession was often contested. Internal rivalries, ambitious chiefs, and neighboring threats constantly tested the stability of the throne. Women were influential in spiritual and economic life, but never before had one stood openly at the center of imperial power. That was about to change. Idia was the wife of Oba Ozoluwa, one of Benin's most feared warrior kings. When Ozoluwa died, a bitter succession crisis erupted between his sons. The kingdom stood at a crossroads. Idia's son, Prince Esiji, faced intense opposition from powerful chiefs and rival claimants who believed he was too weak to rule. Many expected him to fail, or be eliminated. But they underestimated his mother. Queen Idia did not fight from the shadows alone. She redefined the battlefield. She was deeply versed in Benin's spiritual knowledge, political diplomacy, and war strategy. Sources preserved in Benin oral tradition describe her as a woman of strong will, sharp intelligence, and extraordinary spiritual authority. She mobilized loyal factions, secured alliances, and fortified her son's claim not just through force, but legitimacy. When war became inevitable, she became indispensable. Prince Esiji's reign was immediately challenged by internal rebellions and external threats, including rival chiefs and powerful neighboring groups such as the Igala kingdom to the north. This was not a ceremonial conflict. It was a war that would determine whether Benin would remain united, or fracture forever. Queen Idia did something unprecedented. She personally accompanied the army. Not as a symbolic figure, but as a strategic and spiritual commander. Oral histories recount that she supervised rituals to protect soldiers, guided military decisions, and used psychological warfare to weaken enemies. Her presence alone changed morale. Benin warriors believed that as long as Idia stood with them, defeat was impossible. And history proved them right. The war against the Igala became the defining conflict of Esiji's reign. The enemy was strong, experienced, and confident. Victory was uncertain. Then came the turning point. According to Benin tradition, Queen Idia deployed a combination of strategic timing, spiritual rites, and battlefield intelligence that disrupted the enemy's advance. The Igala forces suffered devastating losses. Their king was killed. Their campaign collapsed. Benin emerged victorious. This was not merely a military triumph, it was a political revolution. For the first time, the empire openly acknowledged that a woman had been central to saving the throne. Esiji ascended securely as Oba of Benin, and the people knew exactly who had made it possible. In recognition of her extraordinary role, Oba Esiji did something no Benin king had ever done before. He created a new royal title exclusively for his mother. Oba, Queen Mother of Benin. This was not honorary. The Iyoba was granted. Her own palace at Usulu. Political authority and court officials. Ritual independence. Immense respect equal to senior chiefs. From that moment onward, the Iyoba became a permanent institution in Benin monarchy, a direct result of Queen Idia's legacy. Her power reshaped governance itself. Queen Idia's image was immortalized in Benin bronzes, particularly in the famous ivory pendant mask believed to represent her. This mask, serene, commanding, and adorned with symbolic imagery, was not art for decoration. It was political memory cast in ivory. The mask symbolized maternal protection of the kingdom, spiritual vigilance, victory through wisdom rather than brute force. Portuguese traders who encountered Benin during this period were stunned by the empire's sophistication and documented the power of the Oba, and indirectly the influence of royal women like Idia. Centuries later, when British forces looted Benin in 1897, Queen Idia's mask was among the treasures taken, eventually displayed in European museums, far from the land she protected. Even in exile, her image still commands attention. Queen Idia was not a myth. She was not folklore exaggerated beyond recognition. She was a kingmaker, a military architect, a spiritual authority, a political innovator. Long before modern ideas of female leadership, Queen Idia demonstrated that power does not require permission, it requires vision. Her influence ensured that women in Benin society would forever hold recognized authority in royal and ritual life. And yet, after her death, something curious happened. Historical records about Queen Idia become fragmented. Her final years remain unclear. Some traditions suggest she continued guiding state affairs quietly. Others hint at deeper spiritual roles she may have assumed. What is certain is this: no Iyoba after her ever wielded power in quite the same way. It is as if the empire itself struggled to contain the magnitude of what she represented. Was her power too great to be repeated? Or did later generations deliberately soften her memory to preserve patriarchal balance? Here is the question that still echoes through Benin history. What else did Queen Idia know that was never recorded? What rituals, strategies, and secrets did she carry to the grave, secrets strong enough to change the fate of empires? Because one truth remains undeniable: Benin did not simply survive a crisis. It was reborn through the mind of a woman. And if Queen Idia had not stepped forward that day when the dust of war rose, there may never have been a Benin Empire for the world to remember. But that opens another story entirely, one that begins with the forbidden knowledge of Benin's royal women, and ends with a mystery history still refuses to explain. When the war drums fell silent and victory songs filled Benin's red earth streets, many believed Queen Idia's greatest chapter had already been written. They were wrong. Because the most dangerous power she ever held came after the war, when swords were sheathed, enemies buried, and the kingdom thought it was safe. That was when Queen Idia became something far more unsettling than a warrior's mother. She became a living pillar of destiny. The palace built for Queen Idia at Usulu was not merely a residence. It was a parallel court. While the Oba ruled from the heart of Benin City, emissaries, priests, and messengers moved quietly between the royal palace and the Iyoba's domain. Decisions were not announced publicly, yet outcomes across the empire bore her fingerprints. In Benin oral tradition, elders speak carefully when the Iyoba's palace is mentioned. It was said that certain disputes were resolved there, not before the Oba. Some military strategies were planned there, not in council chambers. Ritual consultations that determined the future of the kingdom were conducted there, under Idia's supervision. This was not rebellion. This was balance. The Oba wielded visible authority. The Iyoba commanded invisible forces. And everyone knew which power was harder to challenge. There were rites in Benin that only women of specific lineage could perform. Rites tied to the earth, fertility, ancestral continuity, and spiritual protection of the land. Queen Idia was said to have mastered these rites at a level unseen before or since. It was believed she could neutralize curses sent against the throne, shield warriors before battle, cool political tension before it erupted into rebellion. Some traditions claim that during certain ceremonies, even the Oba could not be present. This was not because she outranked him. It was because his presence would disrupt the spiritual balance. That detail alone unsettles historians. What kind of power requires a king to step aside? Success creates fear. As Queen Idia's influence became undeniable, whispers began to circulate among certain chiefs. Not openly, never openly, but in cautious murmurs behind coral-beaded hands. She is too powerful. What happens when the Oba disagrees with her? What if the Iyoba becomes greater than the throne itself? History has seen this pattern before. When a system benefits from an extraordinary individual, it celebrates them. When it fears being overshadowed, it restructures memory. And so, subtly without confrontation, Queen Idia's visibility began to change. Her authority remained, but it became quieter, more ritualized, less public. Not because she was weak, but because the kingdom itself was adjusting to the danger of her example. Unlike other major figures of Benin history, Queen Idia's death is not clearly documented. There is no grand burial narrative recorded like those of Obas. No detailed succession ritual marking her departure. This absence is not accidental. Some oral accounts suggest she withdrew voluntarily, choosing a deeper spiritual role that removed her from public politics. Others imply her death was surrounded by strict ritual silence. meaning details were intentionally withheld to prevent misuse of the spiritual power she embodied. And then there is the most unsettling tradition of all. That Queen Idia did not truly die in the ordinary sense, but was ritually transformed into an ancestral guardian whose presence was bound to the land itself. In Benin cosmology, this is not metaphor. It is permanence. After her passing, or transformation, Iyoba Esigi commissioned something unprecedented. An ivory pendant mask, believed to represent Queen Idia. But here is what art historians often miss. This mask was not for decoration. It was worn by the Iyoba during rituals, meaning the king carried his mother's face over his own. Symbolically, this meant her wisdom guided his rule. Her protection stood before him. Her authority remained inseparable from kingship. In simple terms, even in absence, Queen Idia still ruled. And perhaps that is why her image was preserved so carefully, because forgetting her was never an option. Centuries later, when British forces invaded Benin in 1897, they did more than destroy a city. They disrupted a memory system. They looted bronzes, ivories, and sacred objects without understanding that these were not artifacts, but archives. Queen Idia's mask was taken, displayed, labeled, separated from the rituals that gave it meaning. Yet even stripped of context, the mask refused to fade into obscurity. It became one of the most recognized African artworks in the world. Why? Because power leaves residue. And Idia's was too strong to be erased. Modern narratives often celebrate Queen Idia as brave mother, a supportive queen, a symbol of female strength. But that framing is incomplete. Queen Idia was not powerful because she supported a man. She was powerful because the system bent around her intelligence. Her existence challenges uncomfortable assumptions. That African women lacked political authority. That pre-colonial leadership was rigidly patriarchal. That kings ruled alone. Queen Idia proves otherwise. And now we reach the question scholars rarely dare to ask. Was Queen Idia a unique exception, or was she the last of a suppressed tradition? Because if one woman could wield such influence, how many others were erased, silenced, or absorbed into ritual anonymity? What knowledge was deemed too dangerous to pass on openly? What power structures were quietly rebalanced after her to ensure no woman ever stood so visibly at the center again? Queen Idia did not just change Benin's past. She altered what the future was allowed to remember. Her title survived. Her image survived. Her impact survived. But her full story did not. And somewhere between ritual silence, political caution, and colonial disruption lies a truth still waiting to be uncovered. A truth about the hidden authority of African royal women, and the secrets they guarded long before the world began writing history its own way. Because if Queen Idia's power was revealed once, what happens when the rest is remembered? That story has not yet been told. Want more stories like this? Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our story, because this is just getting started.